What's up, everybody? So it's good to be live with everybody here on the website. If you're listening elsewhere after the fact, thank you for tuning in. In this podcast, there's a couple things I'm going to talk about. First off, I might sound kind of extra raspy and seasoned because I lost my voice earlier this week. I had a cold last weekend, and then I did a lot of talking on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And
then your voice vanished for a few days.
Yeah, and now it's got this like kind of texture to it.
Yeah, I'm into
gravelly.
it. I like it. I think it suits you.
Thank you. But I figured we would spend this podcast talking a little bit about the Portal time travel video.
Heck yeah.
A little bit about the Mr. Beast drama.
Oh yeah. Wowie.
And then also we did a Furiosa versus Fury Road visual effects artist react last week. And I have like the two prime people to talk about Furiosa versus Fury Road. And I thought that'd be pretty fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we jump in? What should we jump in with first? What do you guys want to talk about first?
Well, dude, this freaking Portal short of yours turned out sick.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about the Portal short. So I had this idea for a Portal film. It started with years ago. I wrote this like 6 years ago, which was, what's the impossible puzzle in Portal? What can you not escape? A concrete room, no windows, no doors. How would you escape? And then just sitting there, at like, once again, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., lying in bed, turning it over in your head, be like, what would happen for the story? I was like, what if the portal, how could I escape? What if the portal had time travel? I was like, oh yeah, you could go in the portal and you come out the other one like 10 seconds before. And then if you like arrange them the right way, you could go back in time and maybe get out of the room before it was even built. And I was like, okay, but how would that work with like the other people and the other portals? And I had this whole story that I had written, and I wrote a whole short, and it was impossible to shoot.
Yeah.
It would have been so hard to film that short. And so it had been shelved for a long time. And then just 2 months ago, after we finished Gray Matter, I was like, okay, I need to come up with a video. We have this robot arm that we have not used, and it's just sitting in our studio. And I was like, I should do something with it. I should do a trick shot with it, like a cool visual effects trick shot. Then I was like, why don't I just do a cool piece instead? And then I had the idea, I was like, oh, this Portal idea. Let's reimagine it as a one-shot theatrical stage piece instead, and just play it around motion capture and cloning and all that kind of stuff. And, really simplify the idea and just do this one little concept thing. And it's, keep it simple enough that I can learn how to use the robot arm. I can screw it up and redo it and screw it up and redo it. It's 2 minutes long at most. There's no dialogue, etc. And so I jumped into that and made it happen. It was really cool. Like the SISU arm, which is what we used, the keyframing, it feels like keyframing a camera in like Blender. And like you have a controller that can sense where it is in 3D space. So you hold it, you pull the trigger, and then if you want the camera to move left, you just move your hand left like 6 inches, and the camera does the exact same thing if you want to tilt or move around. So your controller in 3D space is the camera in 3D space.
Oh, that's cool.
Like
I didn't know it worked like that.
Yeah, it's like a virtual reality controller. So it makes it really easy to manipulate the camera because you just move your hand as if it was the camera and you twist it and everything.
It's like you having a robot arm.
It's like you having a robot arm. Yeah, or it's like playing Real Steel.
Like the exosuit.
You're doing boxing, the exosuit's doing boxing right next to you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then you put it in a spot and you hit a button and you makes a keyframe. And you go forward 2 seconds and you put it in a new spot, you hit a button, you make a keyframe. So you straight up keyframe your camera like it's 3D animation, which is super cool. But then you're like, all right, let's test it out. And you go back to your first frame and you hit preview, and it's like, the camera might exceed your speed limits. And you're like, oh, right. Unlike a 3D camera, this one in real life has hundreds of pounds of metal attached to it. So you have to really be careful that you're not moving it too fast or like making it shake or do all these kind of things that like it can't do. Another interesting thing is you can scrub in your timeline in 3D animation, right? If you're animating a 3D camera, you can scrub back and forth or whatever. Whoa. You can't scrub with a camera robot arm. You can place your keyframes, but if you want to go back to where it was, it's turn it on, flip over to the mode, hit go, bzz, and it locks at its keyframe. And you can't just.
Oh, interesting.
There's no
I thought you were
scrubbing.
going to say that it's like you scrub through the timeline. It's like,
so cool.
It's like, get out of the way, I'm scrubbing. I'm scrubbing.
So you have to reset the timeline before you go.
You basically have to very specifically be like, let's go to this point in the timeline, hit the go button, the camera's going to get ready, then you're gonna hit go, and then it's gonna move, and it's gonna get there, and it's like, okay, I'm here, and then off.
Interesting.
And then you can hit play, and you can play through it, and you can play through it backwards, but you can't just scrub. You're like, okay, let me just jump 2 seconds forwards.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
But these are the limitations you don't think of as a visual effects artist. At least I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how was it working with it for the first time? Because for me, the main impressive aspect of the short was certainly the choreography. You know, all those different Nikos working perfectly in sync in this like 2-minute sequence.
How many takes was that?
It was probably, I think it was like 14 shots, 15 shots total in the timeline.
Were there's times where you exit frame right, run around, come back in the left side? Oh,
actually, I take it back. Once at the very, very beginning when it's doing the fast time lapse, I run out and I quickly run around and run back in because it's fast.
To get the
speed,
cycle.
you can't tell. I mean, if you look closely, you can see I cut a few frames out. The camera jumps as it's moving. Because you can tell there's a gap between when I run out and I run in, but it's like a 3-frame gap.
So each time, each sort of version of you coming through the portal is you doing a new take.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, I thought there was some I thought you'd done it maybe 5 times and you were running around, but that it almost makes it more digestible approaching it from a filmmaking perspective because you're just like, okay, I'm a new Niko this time.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And you'd always have to if I was doing like a Niko from 10 seconds ago or a Niko from 10 seconds in the future, just remember okay, what was I doing right before this moment? And you'd play the whole scene as if it was happening in the room next to the portal you're about to step through. Because somebody brought it up in the comments, like a really good way to think of the portal short is less about one person doing time travel and more about a stack of rooms attached on the side, just going out to infinity in either direction.
Oh, yeah.
And if you go in one direction, each room is 5 seconds before the other room. If you go the other direction, each room is 5 seconds after the other room. So you're just stepping in and out of rooms that are happening offset 5 seconds before, 5 seconds later in timelines.
My brain. It still melts my brain. It's still so hard to think about.
It's so fascinating though, because that's kind of how time travel would work.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so used to Back to the Future, the latest Avengers movies, where it's kind of like if you change this, then in the future it's gonna. But it's like time travel is really just like a deterministic line of moments that are strung out. You can't change anything. And you would only just be, because time and space, they're an interwoven fabric. So it's not like there's separate things that you can play with.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
And obviously there's a lot of different interpretations about time works, but in a sense, you just look at it as a 4-dimensional coordinate space. You're just jumping to this point in space at this point in time. Or you can jump to this point in space, but at what time are you jumping to? Are you jumping to that time or this time? So it's it's just another coordinate system. At least that's how I approached it here.
Yeah.
And of course, doing motion control is fascinating as well. I'd never done motion control before outside of a very basic camera
slider
on a
system or
slider.
something?
Yeah. I mentioned this in the behind the scenes, but I didn't have the camera tightened down enough on the tripod plate. So at the end of the thing, I go up and I touch the camera and it record. It goes bzz, and it twists. I'm like, oh no.
So you're at the bleeding edge, edge of filmmaking technology. You're literally moving a camera in 3D space with this controller, and then it's just oh, we didn't screw the thing down enough.
Yeah.
And you can't just technically slide the frame left or right because there's a perspective shift that happens as well. But I did anyways. I just slid it and
because it's probably quite muted. The perspective shift is probably not that big.
Yeah. And I'm gonna get real nerdy for a second, real dry here. I apologize for everybody listening, but I composited the whole thing in the DaVinci Resolve timeline. I didn't use After Effects. I didn't use a compositing program. This is almost all in timeline compositing. Using a bunch of different layers, a bunch of different masks, playing it in real time. And if I wouldn't have been able to do that, this piece would have taken twice as long. It's kind of interesting to have a timeline that is your comp. And there's 12 shots, all over the place with masks and things like that. But when you watch it, it's just one shot. And I've never been able to do that with video editing. Up to this point, video editing is still something that takes time to render and you're kicking things out. You're dealing with comps, it's not like a video game where it's 120 frames per second, 4K. I'm not getting, you don't get that as a VFX guy,
Yeah.
And so we're finally, I feel this year, both this year and last year, we're really hitting this point at which stuff's is becoming real time for video. Games and 3D animation have had real time now for a few years. Video's finally getting it. And it's really cool.
And I more about how the sausage is made is now when we're making Visual Effects Artists React or we're making our other Quarter Crew videos, I never have to leave my Resolve timeline. It's it's kind of like jazz. It's oh, I want to do a cool animation right now. I can just flip over to that. I never have to be it used to be, okay, I got to export this out to a different program and I hope I get everything right and the timing's right when I bring it back in. It's like, no, everything is just like real time, tweak it, you know? It's, it just makes everything feel more creative and like the program's less in your way. You know?
Guys, I'm proud to admit that I have switched to Resolve.
You have?
Oh, yeah?
I have. As of like 2 weeks ago.
Heck yeah,
Nice.
dude.
Because I was still cutting in
Congratulations.
Premiere.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? I just like, I have what I needed for the most part.
man, the story of Adobe and Premiere and Resolve. And James Lee made another like anti-Adobe animation.
Mm.
Just
Oh, really?
how like how much everybody complains about Adobe, but then keeps using their products.
Yeah.
And Adobe's like, yes. But I left a comment there where it's like, you know, the thing that's the final straw for me was learning that the team for After Effects was only like 15 people.
Is
And-
that right?
Mhm.
Whoa.
And as a studio, we were paying about $3,500 a year to use After Effects and Premiere.
Wait, for sure, 15 people
Yeah.
for all of it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It might be like 17, you know, whatever. It's point being is it's
Yeah.
like as big as Corridor.
Whoa.
Wow.
I had no idea.
And
That's
like,
crazy.
and my beef isn't with like the After Effects team. My beef is with Adobe. Adobe going, here, I'm going to take literally thousands of dollars. We're going to pocket it. And the team that makes the software that you use, nah,
Yeah.
you guys don't get anything.
Yeah, like
'cause-
that team's probably working super hard, but
Yeah.
that's just not enough people for
It's
a
just
product
not.
that's supposed to be, again, serving an entire
Industry.
company, industry.
It's a big
yeah.
shit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
15 people's not enough. That's crazy. Well, how many Adobe employees are there? Aren't there tons? Isn't it a massive, massive, massive company?
Oh, yeah. Adobe's a big company.
And
but-
After Effects, I feel like is one of their main.
No.
Oh, that's just my.
But it's like
friggin'
a
niche.
it's like a like, you know, they have prosumer cameras. I feel like After Effects is like a prosumer software kind of.
It's just clearly a company like they're bleeding money from people because people don't have an alternative. Adobe doesn't give a crap about After Effects.
Mm.
Adobe just wants your $50 a year.
Dang.
You know, it sucks. It's whatever. I'm not going to keep complaining about Adobe.
Yeah.
Adobe sucks. People should stop using Adobe.
I love-
Seriously, get away from it.
Because honestly,
That's all I'll say about it.
Fusion is free. It's built into Resolve, and it works. If you learn node based, it works just as well, if not better.
Yeah.
And,
What? No, to layer based?
Well, just to After Effects, like you
Yeah.
can do all same stuff, but so yeah, but the thing is like Photoshop. There's no Photoshop alternative.
There's plenty.
But it's they're just
What? Like
no, there
Affinity?
is-
What are the?
Affinity, Krita, there's a bunch. Even Procreate, I would say. But like, here's the thing: when people say there's no alternative, it's because people aren't taking the time to learn how the other software
Right.
works. Like other software, like DaVinci Resolve's amazing. I think it's better than Premiere. People are like, oh, but I can do this one thing in 2 clicks in Premiere, but it's like 8 clicks in Resolve. It's like, no, it's because you're using Resolve wrong. It's because Premiere is using a user interface experience from like 15 years ago. And Resolve went, hey, what if we just did this to be faster? And just you as a user have not taken the time to learn the better way to do it. Like, don't blame the modern software for your out of date workflows.
Mhm,
100%.
You know, it's like, just learn the new software. It doesn't take
It's
that
like
long.
I think we all had this kind of theory here where it's like we all started switching to Resolve from Premiere, and it was like there's just gonna be your like hell week.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take a project and say, I will not leave Resolve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck so bad. You're gonna be banging your desk. You're gonna be like, "Where's this button? You're gonna be calling the program stupid over and over." I
Yeah.
saw this with everybody because like everybody had their week where they moved over to Resolve, and they were like, "It's so dumb that they don't put this thing." And it's like, no, go with the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because again, it just feels so much more like it's out of my way.
Mhm.
Versus Premiere just constantly feeling like it was in my way.
That was me switching to Nuke. That was me switching to Nuke from After Effects.
Yeah.
And thankfully Fenner was here to like walk me through it. But the amount of times I bothered him was absurd. Because we did the Adam West Batman
Mhm.
video, and that was the first time I ever composited in Nuke, and all my shots were in Nuke.
Mhm.
And it was so overwhelming. But luckily, since I'd done nodal compositing in Houdini so much,
Right.
the switch was made easier. But yeah, just like right out the gate, it's the most frustrating thing in the world, knowing what you want to do, knowing how to do it somewhere else, but committing and following through where you are.
Yeah.
But it's how you grow, you know? So I'm glad I made the switch. I finally switched to Resolve, and like already, you know, there was the frustration for sure, but I knew that was going to show up. So already I'm super stoked.
Yeah. Yo, shout out to PMass. I see him in the comments. What's up, PMass? Yep. Yeah, you know, yeah, anyways, take the time to learn the new software, guys. Get away from Adobe. Sure, the developers can make a program great, but what really makes Adobe great is the entire community around it, making plugins and teaching people how to use the program. that community, we just focus on other software. We can make other software great.
This is the thing. Invest in dev teams, man.
Yeah.
Like if they care about the software, you're safe there. Because I remember starting out in 3D, I was so unsure of which application to choose. And I remember looking at Blender at first, and this was years and years and years ago. And I thought, oh, the UI is like a mess. I don't want to deal with that. Like that's clearly, it's free. How good could it be? And I bailed on that and I went a different route entirely. But open source, the power of it is there's so many people who care so deeply that now they've made an incredibly robust system. Houdini is the same. Side effects team is one of the, if not the greatest dev team in the world. They are like geniuses who pour so much into every single version that comes out that every single time it happens, I'm like, I chose right. I finally chose right. And it feels so good that I'm investing in a team that cares. Like, it's kind of the same idea in, I guess, the economics world. Not that I know that much about it, but, investing in the mind behind the company versus just kind of guessing. Like if there's someone who you really believe in, like investing in them is typically a better way to go, I think. But certainly it's true of dev teams.
There's also a new After Effects alternative called Autograph that is coming out or is in development right now.
So it's like a layer-based
After Effects style, a little bit of like, hint of the node-based workflow, but just like Unreal Engine from the ground up, it's been built for GPUs. So it runs in it is, watching people work in it is crazy because it's like you hit play and then you start doing all your things while the video's playing and you're sliding stuff around and masking. It's like, whoa, it's moving.
What a concept.
It's like, what a concept. Your motion graphics should move when you're working on them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think Unreal just built in like a sort of motion graphics suite in it's just like a random release. They were like, oh yeah, we have like a whole motion graphics suite now. And it's just like, it is crazy how these programs like, again, like Blender's like, they have a full 2D animation like suite built out inside Blender now. There's so many that are like constantly responding. And then again, it's like Adobe's, and that's a free program. And Adobe's like, pay us. What is the individual license now? Like
it's like $56, $57 a month. And if you here's the thing, you have to commit to a year.
Yeah.
If you pay for like a couple months, for like, okay, I want to cancel. Adobe forces you to pay the rest of your yearly contract.
That's suspicious, dude. You shouldn't do that.
Sucks. Like that is straight up.
That's so
bullshit.
Sus, dude.
Yeah.
It's like Adobe. If I want to stop using your software, I get to leave. Period. Like, what is this bullshit? Yeah,
dude, they're asking you to forego a week of groceries this month so you can use their program that they don't update.
That's the 15 people thing is still blowing my mind a little bit. Well, speaking of softwares, I guess, and interfacing with new softwares, for this motion control arm, does it have its own like software through which you interface with it?
Yeah, it had this whole tablet that has Windows installed, and then you fire up the SISU app, and it's in that app you can do different things and move the arm, and like it tells you if you're putting it too far. You do have to be careful. You can destroy the camera. Like it is truly like you can program the arm wrong so it goes crunch and like, smushes the camera. 100% a possibility. You can also destroy people with that arm if you're not careful. Just bam. So,
yeah.
I'm more concerned about the camera.
There's so many safety things though. Like you have to be clicking like multiple things for it to move.
Yeah. But still, there's a couple parts like, okay, if I'm like 2 centimeters away from hitting the camera, I need to like chill out and like program it differently.
Yeah.
That and speaking of shots too, in particular for the Portal short, how did you do the high five? Because that was the wasn't even the push from behind. I get you're obscuring most of the contact. That's fine, but the high five looked like a legit high five.
There's a lot of engineering problem solving. So like the first thing we had to do is of course get the timing. So I filmed the whole thing. I filmed the sequence about 3 or 4 times in total, like the whole piece with my phone just on a tripod. And I'd just write the piece by performing it. So I'd do a take. Okay, what's this guy gonna do? What's this guy? I'd go through it. And then you could slide things as needed in the timeline because the camera's locked down. So you can move a performance 5 frames forward, 5 frames backwards, not a big deal. Once I got a performance I liked for the whole piece, I locked it in. And then I went and did voiceover on it. Where I go 1, 2, 3, enter, 1, 2, 3, clap, left, right, leave. I'd say stuff like that. So I'd have all my cues for my body motions. And that'd be for the whole piece. And that'd be playing when we'd be doing the camera motion. So I could tell exactly when things would be happening. So for the high five, there's, okay, enter, 1, 2, 3, clap, and like I'd have that timing, but I still needed to hit the same marker with the other hand. So we set up a C stand with a pole, with the pole ending right there. So I just hit the end of the pole.
That's
with my
great.
hand.
That's great.
However, I would not be able to adjust the timing. So we did it about 5 times. Just 1, 2, 3, bop, 1, 2, 3, bop. And I'd, always be trying to hit that point right on the clap. And sure enough, in the edit, only one of them worked. All the others were off. None of the timing worked, but one of them worked where it lined up. And this is the kind of project where, like, if it didn't, we'd just go back and do it again and do it again and do it again. Because, like, the whole ethos around this Portal short and a lot of, like, the videos we're making right now is when you talk to people in the film industry and you guys are making a video about this, they're like, what's the thing that holds stuff back from being good? It's like time, resources, people. We only have our actor for one day. I'm like, okay, so if your job is to make a good filmmaking content, maybe you shouldn't have time, resources, and people as your number one problems. Maybe if you are trying to make a good film, your attention should go into making it so that you have resources, time, and people to make your film. But that costs money. It's like, well, then change your idea. So it's the one that gives you ample time, resources, people, et cetera, to make your idea. So like this Portal short was like, well, it's one person and it's in the studio and it's hardware that we already have and it's lights that we already have. And the only thing we don't really have is a set. But let's say we get our own set and it's just sitting there. Then all I have to do is I get to go do my shots. I get to go to the computer. I get to cut them together. I'm a noob. I've never worked with a robot arm before. Oh, it's me again. I've never, done this before. You know what? I screwed it up. No big deal. Tomorrow, go back down, shoot it again. Do it again. Go back up, edit it. Okay, it worked this time. But you know what? This part's boring. Go back down there and do it again. Because that's like when I'm drawing a picture or if you're writing a script or making a song, you get to do that. There's no penalty for going back and making something better. But in the world of filmmaking, everybody's made it almost artificially where there's always a penalty for actually trying to make your film better. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like we don't have to take the shitty way of doing things for granted. We can just do things the right way from the beginning. And for this project, it's like, I'm going to be learning. I'm going to be making mistakes. I'm going to need access to this stuff. And so from the get-go, we said, all right, we're not going to rent anything. We're not going to rent our flats for the walls. We're not going to rent a camera. We're not going to borrow the arm. Like it's going to be in studio until the project's done. I'm going to have access to it 24/7 whenever I want, period. And that approach was 100% necessary for making this project happen, for even being any good, because once again, I'm a noob. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to experiment. I need to have low stakes. But honestly, this goes for every single project that at least I've been working on this summer. Gray Matter was the same thing. It's my friends wearing our airsoft costumes in our hallway at the building, right? Oh, that shot didn't work. I need a new shot. Hang out with my friends again and get a new shot. No big deal. And like, I really want filmmaking to become that for at least for myself. But I think that as the corridor style, heck, the worldwide style, it kind of needs to be that. If you're going to tell a narrative and make something, like, why would you artificially like limit yourself? It's like, I'm going to write a song, but I can only play 100 notes. And then I have to stop and I have to release it. It's like, no, what are you doing? You're being a bad songwriter. It's like, I'm going to shoot a movie, but I only have 3 days to do it. And then I have to release it. It's like, why? What do you mean you only have 3 days to do it? You don't have to. You can do whatever you want. You came up with the idea from nothing. Do literally whatever you want. Don't set yourself up for failure. Anyways. Yeah. The little rant about time there.
No, I feel it. I mean, the time that you spent with the robot arm to this point, are there any other ideas that you've come up with now to use that technology? Because it's an interesting size of robot arm where there's like a lot of flexibility, certainly, but it's medium size. It's not on a track. So it's still limited in scale as to what we can actually do with it. Have you wrestled with that idea at all of like what else you want to do with that?
Well, problem is when I start thinking about like cool, challenging shots, I start to like forget about why you even make cool shots in the first place. I do have this idea for an impossible VFX shot where it's 4 of me walking in a circle, dribbling a basketball and passing it to myself. And it's like, okay, how would I break that down with motion control to make this impossible clone shot a thing, kind of like a puzzle, very similar to the Portal thing. But as I do that, I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Truth be told, I don't have a lot of other ideas for the robot arm. It's one of those things where it's cool. It's very cool moving it around. But I'm like, man, I do not need this for 99.9% of my filmmaking.
It's uber specific.
It's so specific.
Because it's like you're saying with the timing. Like if you had shot the thing on a tripod, you just slide the timing around of the high five, but it's like when you're deciding to use a motion control, it's like, okay, I'm locked in on timing. I'm locked in on basically everything.
Yeah.
And it has to be so determined. I mean, it would be cool to do. We had talked about this a little bit, doing some like miniature stuff, like they did in Harry Potter or any of the, having these old miniature buildings and like trying to composite that into a real shot. Or we had talked briefly about, like Star Trek, the way they used to do the spaceships and stuff. So that is one thing I think that would be really cool to explore with a motion control arm.
I think doing a Star Trek, you're right. The one other thing would be the Star Trek piece.
Yeah.
Robert Legato came into the studio, did a react. I think if we did a little Star Trek parody and we had him come in and like guide us as we did like one more Star Trek style motion control capture shot with him, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
So.
I the thing that's most attractive to me is the ability to, I mean, hypothetically, because I've never even used it, but track some intense 3D move from a larger scale shot.
Yeah.
And scale down that data to be applied on this scale and then shoot a miniature that matches.
Right. Because that's potentially one of the other cool things about it is you can take a 3D camera and you could play out that motion with a physical camera, which is kind of a strange.
That is a cool thing, but it definitely brings in the question of like, why are we getting this?
Yeah,
like,
well,
I mean, there might be shots that need it, but that's kind of the same. Like, why do we got this crazy camera rig? You can use it for motion control, and like motion control is one of those things you can't really like. Even though we have fancy computers and phones these days, motion control is still motion control. It still requires the same amount of hardware required in the 70s when they made Star Wars. It's like the electronics are easier to get, and the computers are faster, but like you still need to get a hardware rig into your place, and it just hasn't gotten easier. It's like the only way to do motion control is still a specialized hardware, but like beyond that, there's almost always another way that doesn't involve having to have a robot arm.
Well, I'm thinking of the power of miniature photography. Like, we did that, the Dune Sandworm with Adam Savage's Popcorn Bucket, right? And we got to explore how that interfaces. But something like destruction or like explosions in particular, like you've always said, if we're looking to have a dynamic move in our short, but we need this element and it just doesn't look as good any other way, especially on our timetables, which are so short, then it's like, man, doing it with like a miniature charge with a sweeping camera motion would be so dope.
And having it, having the camera move at, like if you had a drone shot that's kind of slowly moving over an explosion, but you'd have to scale up the camera move or speed up the camera move with the explosion to account for the scale.
Yeah. Oh shoot. So you're right. But it's all just math. I mean, the maths at the end of the day. Like you can't just figure it out. And that's what's so cool about it. Because that's what elevated your short, is like the change in perspective is what really throws you.
Yeah.
Like if that was done on a tripod, the concept's still sick, but it
wouldn't be
the appeal would be nowhere near what it is with the motion.
I'd have to go way deeper into like story to make up for the shooting on a tripod.
Yeah. So while 99.9% doesn't need it, man, that 0.1, whew, it's a good time.
There's still a section of filmmaking that nothing else can do it except for robot arms. 100%.
Heck yeah. That's awesome though. Well, congrats on finally getting that idea out. Because I remember you mentioned that to me at least over a year ago, and I'm sure you've had it for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I wrote the concept like 6 years ago, and I'm really happy I finally got a version of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Have you guys, everybody here, ourselves, the chat, are you all familiar with the Mr. Beast drama that's going down right now?
I thought you were going to say with the Mr. Beast YouTube channel. And
no, I haven't heard of this guy.
There's a whole variety of it, but there's one guy right now that's making videos who was a former employee there. And he's talking about how they're doing illegal lotteries and how, conditions on set are crappy and all that kind of stuff. And, it's blowing up. Everybody's talking about it. I'm just curious. Have you guys heard of it? Are you aware of this?
Yeah, I saw the first video. I think his name is like Dog Park or something. The guy who's making Dog Pack, who's making the videos. It feels like a really informal, maybe less rigorous, like CoffeeZilla kind of thing, where like, which CoffeeZilla with the Logan Paul stuff that's crazy, but like, this situation, it feels like. It almost feels like I'm like, am I supposed to know about this? This is like so in depth. And I mean, because Mr. Beast's channel is so huge that this guy is getting, I think one of the videos, he released another one yesterday. It has like 6 million.
7.5.
Probably has more now.
Yeah.
And it's just a crazy situation because, it's the biggest YouTuber. We all work in space. We all like we all look at his videos and it's like, wow, that's crazy how well those perform. But it's interesting to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really stands, I've seen this more and more on the internet, especially recently, but like there's an aspect of like mobs, especially like on like Twitter and YouTube and Reddit and all that kind of stuff, like where people will make a video, usually with some nugget of truth, but they'll also apply filmmaking to it to amplify certain emotions. And like more and more and more, like there used to be I feel like there was a time where people are generally like, I get it. You know, you're trying to make a piece about somebody, a hit piece a little bit here, but you know what? Mobs aren't cool. If you're going to destroy someone's career, you do it through like, you know, regulatory agencies and like due process. But at this point, everybody's just like, screw it. I love mobs. I love being outraged. Like, I don't care if it's a narrative. I don't care if if it's secondhand sources. Screw it. Let's take them down.
Yeah.
And like, it kind of sucks. Like, and it kind of sucks because like on one hand, you have people that probably need to get some of this mob attention, but like mob justice isn't justice. And so the fact that you have to use a mob to get what you need out of it, like, it's like, that feels gross. And then like on the other hand, like I have this, like, when it comes to media and the truthfulness of media, I have this one experience I always think back to. So my grandma, she ran a charity in Minnesota called CEAP. I think it was CEAP Center or something. It was it was for dealing with refugees. I think from the Vietnam War and Hmong refugees and that kind of stuff. And as she was getting older, they had like the city did an award and they gave it to her. And there was a little local news story on this. So they came in, did an interview, and did all this kind of stuff. So this little news segment comes out. It's just, it's not, I would say it's a throwaway news segment. It's a couple of minutes in the middle of a local news thing. They misspell everybody's names. They list somebody as a foster child who was just a friend of the family. Oh my God. They just error after error after error. And that was just like, inconsequential, tiny things. And like, if they got that wrong, it's just like, how much are they getting wrong on like stuff that actually matters? And then you go and you watch videos like, Dog Pack's videos about Mr. Beast. And, it's great that there's a bunch of firsthand source and stuff in there where it's like he's interviewing people who are actually there. Yeah. Or showing videos from clips from Mr. Beast's videos. Which like the fact that like so few people can differentiate between firsthand and secondhand information and like the value of firsthand versus like the garbageness of secondhand information, like that's concerning. But like when I look at that video and I also think about like as a filmmaker, that's a choice that he made. That's a choice that he made. He decided to show this here. He decided to show this. Like I can see where the filmmaker is making choices and not being impartial and trying to get you to think a certain way. And like combined with knowing how much the news program screwed up back in the day with now knowing how much manipulation filmmakers do in making their films, even if a video, like even a CoffeeZilla video is trying, like for example, is like trying to showcase something bad, I can see the manipulation. And the fact that any manipulation exists makes me feel dirty, makes it feel like it's a mob again, and it doesn't feel like justice.
Well, it's interesting because like the people who talk about who made those errors, they probably went to like journalism school and stuff, and there's a lot of people making content on YouTube that is quote investigative or quote trying to topple big operations. And these are not people, not that you have to go to, like, I think journalism is an action rather than like a specialty or something. Like, I think there's ethics of journalism, but these people are not studied up on that, you know, and there are like core tenets of journalism, whether it's like getting two sources on something, you can't, there's also a very interesting thing happening with this guy, which is like, again, CoffeeZilla, he's very careful to be like allegedly, qualify everything and not run with a claim unless he's double checked it. But this Dogpack guy is like, he's basically like, oh, he's breaking the law. Like he'll say that. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he's breaking, I'm pretty sure he had an NDA or something and he's just straight up breaking that, which is, again, if there's awful things happening, I'd rather that information be out there, but it's it's just an interesting situation. Cause like on one hand, I do understand what you're saying about like mob justice can lead to a lot of like false claims about stuff. But I do think one of the, there's like this conflict in me, because I do think one of the powerful things about the internet is also to give people a direct way to challenge power that didn't exist before.
Mm-hmm.
So like back in the day, I mean, let's say, there's a lot of allegations being thrown out, some pretty bad stuff. Like back in the day, that stuff would just happen. Nobody would challenge it. And it would just sort of, the status quo would continue. But there is, and again, it's this kind of, it's this power that is like unstable, but it has a power that like people have now to like, challenge power.
Through the internet, 100%. But like, you're familiar with the term yellow journalism, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the same thing. It's just, it's through newspapers instead of YouTube.
But yellow journalism in like the, if we're talking about like William Randolph Hearst and like I'm getting like deep here, but like the beginning of the US invasion of Cuba in 1898 was the explosion of the USS Maine, which was totally made up. That's like the genesis of yellow journalism. But the genesis was a guy who was super wealthy, William Randolph Hearst, using his news outlet as an arm of propaganda or whatever. And what we have now is, again, like I don't want to say this in a derogatory way, but a disaffected employee of this company can just put something out there to a lot of people, to as many people as Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
Which is a powerful thing. Because at some point, Jimmy, Mr. Beast, was also just a random dude who started making videos, got a big outlet, has a big company now, and now has a lot of power. And if there are things happening in that institution that are immoral or allegedly, I think there is part of me that hopes that there's an outlet for that can't be silenced with NDAs and can't be silenced with like.
I mean, as far as I know, there is, and that would be the regulatory process and state regulations and laws and due process, courts, the things that you actually use when you're going to like financially or like irreversibly damage somebody's career or their life, versus like, I'm going to go online and talk shit about them. Now, once again, in Dogpack's, favor, he has, Dogpack.
It's so funny. We're talking about this serious topic. It's like, yes, and then Dogpack.
I mean, at least he had, like, he just dropped an interview with somebody who was in a Mr. Beast. Like, at least it's firsthand, right? Yeah. But still, like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if the mob gets it right, mob justice isn't justice. It's like either mobs are okay or they aren't. They're not kind of okay sometimes. Like, once again, due process is due process for a reason. And it kind of sucks more and more watching people give in to this inner desire for like vengeance and rage and just schadenfreude. I don't know if I pronounced it right. Just watching other things burn and like, and everybody's like, yeah, I know this actually isn't okay deep down. We all know that mobs aren't okay. A lot of awful things have happened because of mobs, and mobs do not get it right, and they do not care if they get it right. No one out here is really doing deep research on this stuff. We're taking it at surface level, and then we're going around talking shit about somebody, right?
Yeah.
And just no one cares anymore. Like, whatever. So what if we miss? It's fun.
Yeah.
I like it. It gets me clicks. It's something to watch on YouTube. And like,
but again, it's like like mob justice is like mob rolls up with pitchforks and torches and literally takes you out of your house and kills you. Where it's like it is
destroying somebody's career is not that far removed. It's a pretty big deal.
But I guess the first question is this really gonna destroy his career? I doubt it.
I guess I'm not also like, I'm talking very broadly here, not just about Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's also, sometimes you do forget that you would even be a part of a mob necessarily, because you're watching this video in isolation. There's no one around you. You're hearing this conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you don't think to fact check or,
for sure,
or question the authenticity of the source or what bias they may or may not have, as in Dogpack's videos. Like, there's questions about that too. And then when you finally get all up in your feels, which is so easy to do with, again, curated pieces, then you just lay down how you feel immediately in a comment that then stacks into this mob that then encourages other people to also join. It's like this weird, like I don't see the people around me. So I'm feeling this sort of way. I'm dropping it in the comments below. Then I'm reading and I'm getting validated. Like there's so much going on at the same time that kind of perverts this idea of justice. And I don't know that it's avoidable at this point. I'm like, I really don't know what else.
Well, I mean, we haven't even talked about YouTube's role in any of this either. You know, it's like, don't forget, for every $1 of ad revenue on all those Mr. Beast videos, YouTube's pulling 55%. You know, YouTube's making lots of money off all this kind of stuff. And like, where is their role in this? It's like, they're not hands off. They know Mr. Beast is being pushed to hundreds of millions of people. And it's like, it is their algorithm. You know, they are pushing Mr. Beast. It's like whether it's algorithmic or not, YouTube is pushing Mr. Beast or anybody else, you know?
Yeah, they're pushing Mr. Beast, and they're also pushing this like takedown stuff as well. And they profit off of both sides of it.
Yeah. And if they say, oh, it's just our algorithm, it's like, it's your algorithm.
Yeah.
You're pushing Mr. Beast. An algorithm is made by a human being to do what that human being wants it to do.
I mean, we made them, but we don't control them. It's like they're your robots.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you were mentioning Legal Eagle's video.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. What is...
He was essentially saying that these allegations of, you know, I think the big allegation was that there are illegal lotteries happening in some of his live streams and stuff like that. And...
Oh, they're definitely illegal lotteries. Yeah, like 100%.
Because and I guess what people don't mention to Mr. Beast's defense is that tons of YouTubers have made this mistake.
We made a mistake.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it, but like we kind of recently made that mistake as well, and it's a very easy mistake to make because you think it's just that there's a very nuanced sort of language around what constitutes a sweepstakes, a lottery, a contest. And if you are in the gray area of any of those, it's now illegal.
Yeah.
And so most of Mr. Beast's, if he's like, I'll give you $10,000 if you buy one of these Samsung phones, there's always that, like, you can also mail in and do it for free, but nobody does that.
But it's so hard to do. It's like that, that Nathan... Is it Nathan For You episode where you have to mail in the rebate and there's like this whole hike you have to go on? It's like this insane process that no one in their right mind would do.
And it's like the alligators that they had to get by.
And then that crazy twist at the end, if you know, you know, it's the most insane thing ever. But yeah, like it's that kind of idea where you make it so difficult that it's legally okay, but just no one's gonna.
And just because, you know, the internet has been the Wild West, like a lot of people have made that mistake. And it's just, so I guess Legal Eagle's point's like, yeah, there's a lot of shadiness happening, but and maybe those little things are, you know, I think they've since deleted those live streams and stuff. So they probably, and it was years ago. So I think they were like, oh shit, we kind of like screwed up here. But what it sounds like to me at the end of the day is like there's probably some shadiness going on. I mean, I don't think you can watch Mr. Beast's videos and not go like, is this good? Is this good for humanity? And is this, again, like, I don't want to, but like,
they're super exploitative.
Yes.
And I've never liked the money, like dance monkey dance. Like it sucks. It sucks. I'm not into that that content at all. I think it sucks. And I think everybody has a responsibility to be moral consumers and not consume content that sucks and like denigrates people.
Yeah.
All right. Soapbox over.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
But you're right, Dean. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. It's, you know, the film industry's got lots of regulations and like YouTube doesn't, you know, and they're learning the exact same lessons. Like all the people that work for Mr. Beast are learning why unions exist for film sets. Because film sets are dangerous and they can get very abusive very fast.
Well, that raises a really interesting point because there's an aspect of this where I always try to stay as like neutral as possible when I'm consuming all this stuff, despite the thumbnails where it's just like evil and then an arrow to Mr. Beast. And it's like, wait.
I have a point on that after you're...
I mean, go ahead now. Yeah, please.
Okay. Anybody who's like being like, Logan Paul just revealed that he's an evil POS. Like, guys, Logan Paul sued a guy for defamation. All right. There's other people out there that are murdering people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are torturing people, or like, you know, corrupt and like stealing food from, like, guys, there are real evil people. So if you actually give a crap about morals, shut up about Logan Paul. Like, shut the fuck up about Logan Paul and stop giving him attention. Who gives a shit? Evil is trying to assassinate the president. All right.
Yeah.
Suing CoffeeZilla, that sucks.
Yeah.
But you're just trying to get bullshit clicks. And when somebody's like smirking into camera and saying Logan Paul's evil, like, no, that person's also a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Just like Logan Paul.
Yeah, because they're trying to absorb the second hand, and it's easy to play right just there. But at the end of the day, it's like, I think what we see is just my observation is some level of sociopathy, certainly narcissism, not necessarily with Logan Paul specifically, but like Mr. Beast as well, and like all these other people who are trying to create this thing. Like Mr. Beast, from everything that I've heard about him, is like focused on being the best YouTuber. And when you're going for that target, you lose some humanity. Maybe he didn't have as much humanity as everybody else, you know, or most people. And you take advantage of certain people and you cut certain corners and you don't think about how that affects people. I don't think at the end of the day, he's going home and going, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's going home and going, oh, we made a good video. Unaware of all these people who were like, that sucked.
Or just not caring about it.
Or is not caring about it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where there's this YouTuber who starts out by saying, what do you say? Like Jake Paul 100,000 times or whatever. Those videos he used to make, challenge videos for himself. Where he'd put himself through hell, which is fine when you're not taking advantage of other people.
And it also says something about, I think he's much more it's much more interesting than pure evil. It's like, this is a strange person.
Yeah.
Like if you like, cause you can like, people are like, oh, these videos are fake. Maybe now, but you can go back and look at a 10-hour video of him watching like a 2-minute video on loop and just sitting there.
No,
like,
Mr. Beast still does that stuff. Like, he was just in a cave for like a week.
Yeah,
like,
buried alive, and like he still does all that stuff.
Yeah,
and this is a guy who's fine doing it to himself.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure to some degree he thinks it's fine doing it to other people. You know what I mean? And I'm reading into his head a little bit too much.
It's just a horrifying mind to be in.
It is, but I'm wondering, like, as a guy who started out just doing it all himself, and then it started to grow, and then he found other ways to like do it more often with more people and in bigger ways. This company is growing, but this guy has no business experience. He has no real understanding of the nuance of all this stuff. He's now riding this wave that is getting so massive that now there's all these people at play. And I saw a letter was released from his company. I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident, but it was like an internal memo that was basically saying, you know, our goal, what was it saying? I'm trying to remember what it said. I don't want to like misquote it. Did you see the internal memo by chance?
No, I didn't.
Gosh, darn it, what did it say? I've actually blanked on what it said.
Was it kind of like
Does anyone in the chat remember what it said?
When it reminds me of like when Elon took over X now, or formerly Twitter, and he was like, we're doing this. We're hardcore. We're a hardcore company now. And it kind of reminds me, like it a little bit reminds me of Elon Musk, where it's like, this guy's down to work 17 hours a day or whatever. But I think it's a little screwed up when you apply that to your employees who have families and stuff, and who have different value structure than you. And it's like, it's okay to do that on your own. Yeah. But when you create an institution that basically,
I'd even argue it's okay to do it if from day one you've communicated that that's the expectation when people join. Like the military. It's like, you don't get to go home when you're done working at the military.
Yeah.
You stay on base. You know, but they don't spring it on you halfway through your time.
Yeah. I remember what it said. He said that we're starting an HR department. That's what it was in particular that was interesting.
They're starting
I know. So this is the interesting thing. It's like, shouldn't you have done that?
Yeah.
Like how big you are? But then I just wonder internally, it's like, is he so consumed with this idea? He's not focusing on these things. And so Niko, you're in a really unique situation where 15 years on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like you started out, you and Sam, right? And you have literally created a company. Albeit it's not, you know, however many people he's got working for him. It's just the size of After Effects.
Yeah.
But like, what was that process like, learning the business side and like handling people?
That's a good question. Like, so my dad used to run a couple of fast food restaurants with his brother, and like hearing the stories about them dealing with employees, you know, because you get all walks of life with fast food, right? You get some really good employees, and you get some like, you know, guys who are really into drugs and steal money from cash register, you know, and you got to fire them. And like, you hear the stories about all that, and you kind of learn, at least his perspective working with that, how he's managing people, and, you know, learning about cash flow and yada, yada. So, you know, I didn't have any business training in school, but I had all that, you know, listened to my dad's experiences when I kind of got into doing Corridor. But my biggest approach with Corridor was just clear communications and expectations, and also keeping the team small, not going huge. But just being like, here's what we need. Here's what we're doing. Are you down? Yes or no? And if I can be clear and not have to lie about what I need, and the other person clearly hears it and they said, yes, I'm on board. If our communication's been good, then the experience is wonderful from there on out. And that's what I've tried to do. I mean, I can't recall really having any issues with any people that have worked at Corridor. Like the only heat we get is the same heat that other people deal with on YouTube, which is somebody says something, everybody takes that at face value, gets whipped into a rage, goes and drops that rage wherever they see it needing to be dropped.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's, where it comes from, whether it's real. Cause I think to a lot of people online are just made up characters.
Yeah.
I think to a lot of people listening to this podcast right now, I'm a fictional character. Right? I'm just Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Mr. Beast is just Mickey Mouse. Everybody's just Mickey. These are made up people. None of them are real. You'll never see them in real life.
Which is why some of them become the villains of the narrative.
Exactly. That's why people are like, this person sucks. They're the next, whatever. Because to them, they're just talking about, I don't know. I'm trying to think about like a famous bad guy from a recent. They're just talking about Thanos, right?
Yeah.
It's just characters in their minds. But obviously, that's not reality. These are real people, and these are real things that are happening.
And I don't think the vast majority see them as bad people, see themselves as bad people. So it's like an interesting gray. Of course, I don't know. I haven't seen these videos you guys are talking about, like little tiny slivers of them. So I don't know enough about the situation. I think just in general, it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
On all these people who are getting like outed constantly and then just disappear.
It's also perhaps a reminder that some of these like regulatory agencies, like the FTC and the FCC, are way understaffed.
Yeah.
It's like when the IRS like gets less money to like audit people, like the auditing team on the IRS like has less money than like the lobbying teams at like Google to like lobby the IRS, or like the FBI's like cyber crimes division has like less people working for it than like Microsoft security team. It's like the FBI is supposed to be like the last stop of defense, It's like, I think we might need to rebalance
conspiracy
resources
theories in general. Like, how many resources you need to pull off some of these ideas?
It's
like just not the case.
Yeah, but that's in reality. That's what should be happening. Like, if there's problems on the set with Mr. Beast, there should be OSHA. It's dealing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can make an expose online, but no matter what, you're gonna start introducing personal bullshit. And like once again, at the end of the day, mob justice isn't justice, even if they get it right. It's still not justice. It's by definition, it's not
almost
justice.
like he got caught in this space, which I think, like we're talking about with Corridor and anybody on YouTube, is like start as one person or two people. And then at some point there's this blurry transition into being like, oh, we're like a company now.
Yeah.
And it's a gray area, which I understand, like people are like, Mr. Beast is the biggest channel, so we're going to, call out all these violations, but it's just like, they're just sort of sloppily making their way to like, they're like they're saying, with like announcing we're going to have an HR team. They're like, oh, we didn't even realize we're like,
that's crazy,
a company.
Yeah.
Now,
And that's the thing is like, I definitely extend a little grace with that in mind for those types of issues. But it's also on the other end, it's like not an excuse if it's doing damage to people.
100%.
Because it's your responsibility if you are pursuing this thing to make sure your bed's made.
100%.
Like that is up to you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So yeah, it's a very nuanced issue, and people can get real hot real fast. And I mean, I know I can too. So I really try to curb my enthusiasm when it comes to those kinds of things. Yeah.
It sounds like, at the end of the day, like, I don't know what's going on with Mr. Beast, Jimmy, all that kind of stuff. But man, just pay your people, just pay your people, especially if you're making a channel about exploiting money, which, just pay your people. Like, it'll clear up so many of your problems.
Yeah, pay your people and you won't get any dog packs.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see where that goes. It'll be very interesting to see it unfold.
Yeah.
I was wondering for a while though, with how big he was, I was like, something's gonna happen.
Oh yeah.
Something, dude.
Yeah.
You're watching the Burj Khalifa being built. You're like, that's pretty tall.
Yeah.
I don't know if that can
What's
hold.
that built on?
Yeah.
What's that made of? Is that solid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's crazy stuff.
Speaking of fury in general.
Wait.
Oh.
We only got 2
What time
minutes.
is it? Oh no, we got 2 minutes. What a shame.
Next
what
time.
A shame.
We'll get into Fury next time.
Okay.
So our next podcast, Furiosa versus Fury Road.
Gosh, dude.
Yeah.
That'll
think
get me
about
heated.
So, hey, everybody here on the website, thanks for joining us for the podcast. We're going to do a little hangout, little after show here after the podcast is done, answer some questions, have a chat, just hang out. And if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or wherever, consider coming on over to corridordigital.com and joining us for the podcast live. We're generally doing them every week. It won't necessarily be every week. Sometimes I lose my voice, which is kind of weird. Having lost my voice, I realized how screwed I would be for my job if I couldn't talk.
Oh, yeah.
There's it totally messed up my week.
React is just facial reactions to VFX.
You got to quickly train an AI voice so you have it in case it leaves.
Pass yourself to the computer.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're hearing this podcast on other platforms, consider joining us on corridordigital.com. You get the podcast live, you get it early, you get our other videos early, all that good stuff. You guys know the deal. But yeah, thanks for listening to the Corridorcast. We'll see you in the next one. And for all y'all on the website, hang out for a minute. We'll do a little hangout once the podcast is over.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Something about waving. I just like it.